So one thing I've always kind of wondered about with Resident Evil is, will Capcom ever kill off one of the core characters that we've come to know and recognize throughout the series? And when I say core characters, most people know who those are. It's basically the established characters from the original trilogy that are still here to this day. And so I'm just curious as to, will Capcom ever have one of them get killed? Because we've seen plenty of other characters get killed, such as side characters like Luis in Resident Evil 4, where Sadler kills him in the castle portion of the game, or in Resident Evil 6 during the end of Chris's campaign, we see Pierce sacrifice himself for Chris and to kill the BOW. And so we've seen characters like that get killed off, and we've seen plenty of like throwaway characters get killed off, like Rachel in Revelations 1, where the moment we see her, she gets killed by an ooze monster, or in Resident Evil 4, Mike when he gets shot down during the island segment after helping Leon and stuff. So we've seen plenty of characters like that get killed, but what about the core characters? Will Capcom ever pull the trigger on one of them and actually have somebody of that list get killed off? And if so, which one of those characters is the most likely to actually be killed off? I have two characters among the core cast that I think are the most likely to get killed off, and so I'll kind of talk about those two in this video real quick. The first one is Chris Redfield. I think Chris has a very good chance of getting killed off, because when you think about it, in Resident Evil 6, the original idea was to actually have him get killed off. Like, that was something that they were considering doing. You know, they want to have him get killed off, and then Pierce would kind of carry on his legacy. Obviously, they switched it around. They had Pierce get killed off and Chris live on, and instead of retiring, he continued to fight the good fight. But that idea was in the back of their mind. They actually were considering killing Chris off. And then you fast forward to Resident Evil 8, and in that game, you get that line before it came out, the whole his story comes to an end. And when people heard that, they started speculating what that could possibly mean. Does it mean Ethan's story comes to an end, or does it mean Chris's story comes to an end? Because they're both in the game, so who are they referring to based off of that line? And so people kept speculating, and then to further speculation, when we saw the game's cover art, it was Chris on the cover art with half his face as Chris and the other half was like a werewolf. And so that was sort of implying that, okay, is he going to mutate into a werewolf monster and we're going to fight him as like a boss fight? Like, what's about to happen? And so there was a big strong tease for a while there that Chris could potentially be getting killed off in Resident Evil 8. Ultimately, though, we know that it was actually Ethan who his story came to an end, and Chris is still alive and doing just fine. And so that's what ended up happening. But I could definitely see like Resident Evil 9 or something being Chris's last story, where they wrap up his character arc, where he tries to solve the corruption of the BSAA and see what's going on, and in some form or another he gets killed off, whether it's he sacrifices himself for his teammates or whatever the main villain is, whether it's like a intelligent scientist of some sort that like mutates himself, or if it's like some BOW monster or whatever, maybe that it gets the best of Chris and ends up killing him. Something like that could happen, but I could definitely see him getting killed off. And when you think about it, I think it'd be okay, because his character arc is sort of done everything it needs to do. He took down Umbrella, he defeated Albert Wesker, which was like the last bit of loose ends of Umbrella that he needed to take care of. And then on top of that, he saved Jake in Resident Evil 6, which basically helped save the world because Jake had the antibodies to the C virus. And so his character arc is pretty much done all it really needs to do. In 7 and 8, he's just a background character, really. He doesn't really do anything too significant during those two games. And so I think it would be just fine if they decided to kill him off. They just need to do it properly. Don't pull a Last of Us 2 or anything. Make sure it's a good death. Give him a respectful death, because he's such an impactful character to the franchise. On top of that, the other character that I think could actually get killed off would be Barry Burton.
What the hell?
I think there's a really good chance for Barry to get killed off, because one, he's the oldest of the core characters. I want to say in Resident Evil 1, during that time, he was like 38, while all the other STARS members, not counting Wesker, were in their early to mid 20s. I believe that's what it was. And so, from an age perspective, he's already older than the other characters. Then, on top of that, the big kicker, his adopted daughter Natalia, who he adopted in Revelations 2 at the end of that game, as we all know, has the consciousness of Alex Wesker in her mind. And so, should Alex Wesker take full control, there's a really good chance that she's going to kill Barry. And if so, that would be how he gets killed off. And so, I could see that happening. My only concern with that is that they have it where he gets killed off screen, and then the game where Alex Wesker as Natalia is featured as the main villain, it's, you know, Mora as the main character or something like that, and she's like seeking revenge, or we learn like halfway through the game that Barry got killed by her or something like that. And that would just be super lame for the character to get off screen. Like, if he gets killed, I want it to be an on-screen thing. Like, have it where he's fighting Natalia, Alex Wesker, but he's conflicted because he sees that as his daughter, but it's also Alex Wesker. And so it's like, does he kill her, or what does he do? And so he's like conflicted and he doesn't know what to do. And because of that confliction, it causes him to lose the fight and he gets killed by Alex Wesker. Have that on screen. Show that fight. Show that confliction of Barry where he's struggling with this whole thing and it ends up costing him his life. Like, do that. That would be perfect way to wrap up his character and have him get killed off. And that would be a substantial death because he is highly popular. You know, he is Jill's partner in the original game. He's got so many awesome, iconic quotes from Resident Evil, and he was awesome in Revelations 2. Like, he carried that game. We all love Claire, but Barry carried that game. But Chris and Barry, to me, are the two most likely to get killed off characters, in my opinion. I could also see Leon or Ada getting killed off, where they tried to protect the other like they always do, but this time it cost them their life. You know, Leon took a bullet for Ada in Resident Evil 2. Ada has done things like shooting Chief Mendez to distract him from Leon, and they've always come out alive trying to protect each other, you know. But maybe in this next time that they do that, one of them gets killed trying to save the other, and that's how one of them could potentially die. So I could see something like that happening. I think characters like Rebecca and Sherry are kind of safe because they're like one of the younger ones, and so I don't think they have too much to worry about, especially Sherry. So I think they are pretty safe. I think Jill is personally pretty safe because they already kind of did the whole Jill died in Resident Evil 5 thing, and you know, she turned out to be okay because she survived the fall and Wesker mind manipulated her and all that stuff, but she wasn't actually dead. But they kind of went there with her already, so I don't think they would finally bring her character back only to have her get killed in that exact same game. Like, that would just be real rough on Jill fans, so I don't think that's going to happen. And then with Claire, there is a possibility for that. Since there are 2 Redfields in the series, they could kill Claire Redfield, that way that there's only 1 Redfield remaining, and that would, you know, encourage and amp up the other Redfield to be like, alright, time to get really serious. I've just lost Claire. And so Chris goes on a complete rampage and really goes all out on the bioterrorism and stuff like that, or vice versa. So that's just my opinion on it. I think that it's really Chris or Barry that have the most likely chance, but I think some of those other characters could also end up getting killed off. What I would hate to see anyone get killed off because they're just so iconic and everything, but I don't think that's really a realistic thing to see happen. I think when the series actually comes to an end for these characters, I think at least one of them does need to be killed off, just because that's the realistic thing. I just don't think it's realistic for them all to just retire happily ever after and chilling at their beach houses. Like, come on, at least one of them has to get killed off in some way or another. Like, come on. But that's my thoughts on it. I want to go ahead and end this video here, and I shall see you all on the next one. See ya then.